Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Pseudoregalia. In the last part, we started off the game and got a good distance in, actively getting several major power-ups in the process, before ending off quickly at that save point here back in Castle Sansa. So at this point, we're going to actively go out of the way to grab a couple of extra keys on top of some other items in this area before we actively move on to the next notable region. Mind you, if memory serves, the entrance I used to reach the next area is technically one of the side entrances, but it's kind of hard to judge in my memory because if memory serves, the next area has 5 distinct entrances from 3 different overall areas, so it really just depends on what order you're actively deciding to explore rooms in or where you're deciding to use your small keys. While we explore, though, I do want to talk about one specific aspect of this LP that's a little bit interesting entirely for behind-the-scenes reasons. Future me, put up the image. This is a page in a notebook I have here. It's like page 2 or 3 in general out of like maybe 6 I've used, period. This is my LP list I've been writing since, as the page says, May of 2020. Just under 6 years ago at this point, which is kind of wild. I have been slowly adding like 5, 6 games at a time to this list for over half a decade, and Pseudoregalia here actively marks the end of this one page. There are some odds and ends in that if you actively look closely, like there's actively Metroid Dread and Samus Returns entry that's just not crossed off at all because I ended up delaying the idea of doing that because I wanted to wait until Citra was better with Samus Returns before doing that, and then Citra died, so that's been delayed until Azahar probably gets a bit better. And there's also a Final Fantasy V entry on that list, which is a bit more interesting in my eyes because that LP was actually the first one I recorded all the footage for and edited after the move into this house about 5 years ago now? And commentary was started on it, but some of you might recall I like to do Final Fantasy with my one buddy Quill. But by the time even the footage was first recorded, we were more busy adults and timing was just harder to line up, and it's gotten even worse since, so while I still have the footage for that LP, it's kind of soft, canceled, quote-unquote. I might just do it with someone else or just do it all on my own at some point. C-Y-U-I-Y-C-E? I'm going to be real with you. I have no idea what that specific Goat Butler is trying to say. I've seen some people on like Steam forums try to say maybe he's asking if you can help him find his face, but I don't know. With that said, welcome to Sansa Keep. This is technically the highest point in the overall world of Pseudoregalia, level design-wise. And while overall I'd say Castle Sansa is more of an overall overworld for the game with how it connects to other areas, depending on how you're going about things, Sansa Keep can also serve the same purpose. There's several entrances here that lead to various areas across the game's campaign. But I want to come over here to do this really large room to try and get the small key in the distance. While I go about doing this room, which requires us to hit 2 switches on either side of it to raise a platform to reach the small key in the distance, I want to finish off what I was trying to say with the LP list topic. I mostly only bring up the LP list here because in a way, finishing this game off and finishing that page is a surprising landmark for me because that's a good half decade of my life, damn near a 1/6 of my life period at this point, and I guess it just kind of makes me reflect a lot on my life and how it's gone the last half decade or so. Kind of the last decade in general, really, since early college when I was unsure about my major and all that, but the last 6 years especially have been a lot. Like, in that 6-year period alone, starting maybe even like a month after the May dating on that list, I started streaming on Twitch and met many friends through that. One of them introduced me to the VTuber scene, becoming one herself. Then I became one, which led to other friends, which led me to meeting one person who became my girlfriend about 6 months later after that. And as I've mentioned here and again since ActRaiser 2, we got married last year. It's a lot to look back on. Life happens quick, and adapting to it can be the interesting part of life. I know this last few minutes hasn't been too relevant to the game itself, but there's something about finishing off a full page of LPs that I've built over 6 years coming to an end that just puts me in this kind of mind space. Heck, it'll probably happen again when I finish the next page of LPs I'm going to start building. Although I say that good chance the next page is going to take even longer to fill out, maybe like 8 years or so, depending on whatever games I put on it, because even with smaller games, I put more effort into editing nowadays due to the postscript edits and all that. Hi, future me, by the way. And I imagine no matter what my life choices are the next, like, 5 years, I imagine there's going to be parts of my life that just get busier and busier until I eventually just calm the hell down. They took away all my furniture. How dare they? Mind you, I should say, I'm looking forward that far ahead, and I know some people will say, well, what if you stop in that period? I really don't have any intention of stopping doing this. I've only really ever thought about doing it maybe 2 or 3 times. Memory serves, I thought about stopping while editing that soft canceled FF5 LP because I recall I was in bad headspace at the time due to the move. And because I recorded that game a little bit differently, the footage just kept crashing my editor, and I just got tired of that. I think I thought on it briefly during the Resident Evil 0 subtitle editing, but that was more of a joking, what am I doing to myself kind of deal. But I was genuinely driven to dread recording and editing the latter parts of the Alpha Sapphire LP, specifically the Battle Maison. That really just made me contemplate stopping, period. Thankfully, though, by the time I reached the end of it, I thought, well, I never need to do it again, because if I ever get to X and Y, I'm probably just going to do a brief showcase of it, which is going to take maybe a 16th the time? What I'm trying to say is, you guys ain't getting rid of me anytime soon. So, as I was going through that topic, we got a couple other health pieces along the way, which boosted our health up to 4 total pips, which is technically 8 because each circle is actively 2 health points. But we want to go around here, up this little platform here to get our next power-up. This is the Sunsetter. Press the left trigger, a Q key while in the air to plunge downwards, which can then chain into a high jump. Use this to break through fragile floors and simply stop yourself in the air. Jumping right after the plunge will result in a high jump. This is effectively Sybil's version of a ground pound. With that said, while it does do damage for combat, it is again more of a platforming utility. You can use it to break certain walls, but if you jump immediately after using it, you do a very high jump which you can use to reach very high places without having to do a slide jump. With that said, there is one extra little bit of toolkit the Sunsetter has that the game does not tell you about, similarly to the side jump actually. Specifically, if you start the Sunsetter's animation and press the jump button, I believe, before you actively start moving downwards, you will cancel the Sunsetter and do a minor backflip. That extra little height that canceled Sunsetter gives you can help you get up to certain platforms earlier than you're meant to, and can also be used in tandem with the Sungreaves bounces to reach some really good distances and heights. You know you did the cancel right when you end up seeing an after image left behind from Sybil like that, similarly to when you use an attack, do a slide, or do any kind of high jump to begin with, really. Doing that there actively allows us to reach this room a little bit earlier than you really meant to. You meant to wait until like 2 power-ups I get from now to get this. But I want to grab it now because while it's not super useful, I might as well have it. This is the Strike Break. Hold attack until your weapon is ready, release to strike. A more powerful attack that locks you in place can be used to destroy certain walls. This is a charge slash. It does do more damage, especially when stacked with the indignation buff, I believe. But it takes just long enough to charge where it doesn't really come to my mind more often than not, especially with as little as combat really comes into play in this game to begin with. This is the only power-up in the game I really look at more as a key for progression rather than an active piece of toolkit that allows me to do other things across the game's level design, because we need the strike back to actively progress in one area we haven't been in to begin with. And I believe in a second area, it's required to get some extra power-ups. So, while it is certainly nice to grab that this early, especially for efficiency's sake with later areas, you're not going to really see me take advantage of the fact that I have it outside of when I actively need it. I want to say they want you to grab the strike back in sequence after an ability that allows you to interact with walls in a new way. We're grabbing later this part, I believe. But even in my first run, I think I tricked out getting the strike back through other methods. Probably more precise kicks than what we did there, or a really well-timed slide jump from memory, because I noticed you could do that pretty early in. This here is the next notable collectible type, an aspect. These are hidden throughout the level design like the health pieces are, though often less deviously than those can be. Usually aspects are rewards for specific platforming challenges. What an aspect does depends on which one you picked up, as they're entirely unique in each instance. They can range from giving you an extra kick with your Sungreaves before you need to actively hit the ground to reset them, or they can eventually build up to another power meter on the top left for healing or indignation use. These can be real game changers depending on which ones you find when you find them, so I really recommend actively exploring the level design to find these, arguably more than the health pieces. Also, you're meant to wait until we get the same ability I was talking about earlier that allows us to interact with walls in a new way to get this health piece, but a well-timed slide jump and some well-placed kicks can get you up here a little bit earlier than you're meant to. Worth noting though, for one reason we'll get into later this part if memory serves, there's actively more aspects in the game now than there were at launch, but the ones that were added are largely of one specific variety. Welcome to the Empty Bailey. This is my favorite area in the game because this is a giant abandoned town area. I love the vibes here, the visuals are really nice to me, but especially the music is so good. This is my favorite song in the game. I'm not here. Okay then, strange little goat man. I think the main reason I like this area though, outside of the music, is that something about the platforming here just feels very satisfying. as the buildings are placed very deliberately in ways where there's usually more than one way to get up any single one of them, either by using the walls of nearby buildings to do so, or just Sybil's ever-increasing platforming utilities. Plus, we get easily my favorite power-up in the game here that's not named the Sun Greaves. In fact, let's go grab that right now. This is the Solar Wind. Jump while sliding. Completes the technique of the slide. Can cross long distances with an airy long jump. This gives you a slide jump that is the fastest way of moving in the game, and the bunny hopping thing I actually brought up last time can be much more easily chained off of this than sliding off a platform. Thus, this is also the best way to preserve your momentum and gain some speed. If memory serves, there is a bit of toolkit with it where you can do a side hop immediately after landing from a solar wind jump and get some mad air off of it, but I'm really bad about using that specifically. I tend to just try to do the slide jump still where I can. With that said, doing the side hop out of a slide is a little bit harder after you get the solar wind because you'll likely trigger the solar wind jump by hitting the jump button anyway. Now, this is an attempt at a sequence break I'm going to do here. I actively do not succeed at this, so I just move on until later. There is an aspect below the bell on this steeple here. If you place your kicks right, you can get up there now and grab that a little bit earlier than you're meant to, but I ended up being unsuccessful at that, so I wait until later. I actively did do several takes of this specific recording session just to try and get that to work, but it was taking long enough where I was just like, nah, it's not worth it. Can grab this health piece, though, with some pretty precise platforming. So, we're here now for a small key as well as this over here. This is our first major key. There are 5 of these located throughout some of the game's levels, and for reasons we'll get into in a few moments, they are also our endgame goal, so grabbing one now is a pretty nice indication of progress. Pseudoregalia is actively, I think, one of the best examples of a game really changing up on a second playthrough when you know where things are, even compared to other Metroidvanias, as the extra platform utility experience you gain by the end of your first run can really change how you go through levels and what order you do things in. And I think how long I'm in each area in this LP is a very good example of that compared to my first playthrough. If memory serves, I did take care of this game in a single stream back when, so about 4.5 hours or so for my usual schedule. Comparing that against this LP, the save file by endgame is at a timer of just over 3 hours if memory serves. Editing out failures at certain platforming sections, this LP is 5 videos long, each about 20 minutes long, for about 2.5 hours in total. And worth noting, that 3 hours actively includes content that wasn't in the game during my 4.5 hour stream back when, so yeah, I'd say I got through this much faster than I did the first time around. Either way, by platforming around the Bailey, we can get on top of this wall over here to reach the tower remains. We've made it to the tower that tablet mentioned back at the dilapidated dungeon. Make sure you do hit the switch before heading over here, by the way, as that opens up a shortcut to this area from the main entrance we first entered the empty Bailey from. A tower holding the essence of the princess, never to be seen again. But with the 3 powers of the sun, one can find their own path. So what that specific tablet is telling you is that in order to do the platforming to reach our main destination here in the Tower Remains, you need specifically the Sunsetter, the Sun Greaves, and the Solar Wind. With that said, if memory serves, there are certain speedrunning tricks people can do here to get through that with maybe only 1 or 2 of those abilities. Not that most people on a first playthrough or even most casual playthroughs after the fact are going to play like that, but it is the main reason I've structured the LP up to this point in the order I have, so I can get the Sun Greaves as soon as possible, get the Solar Wind and Sunsetter ASAP as well. And any other abilities or pickups along the way I grabbed are largely for efficiency's sake. So the Tower Remains itself is a giant vertical platforming challenge that ultimately leads to the roof, but as you can see, there's also a power up here, and that's actively the main reason we're here at this specific point. You can get up there with doing those jumps, by the way. I just massively screwed up. Before we actively try to get back up there, though, make sure you come over here and hit this switch, as this will open up an elevator to the bottom, which has not only the save point for the area at large, but also a switch to open the front door, which will cut out a good third of the platforming here if you're smart about it. Since I screwed up those jumps, though, I have to actively play the first part of this area pretty straight. Specifically, you gotta use the Sunsetter as well as some Sungreave kicks to actively climb the platforms around this side of the room and reach where that power-up is. This is actively the power-up in question I've mentioned already a few times. This part that allows you to interact with walls in a new way. So this is the power-up you technically want to get before you get, say, the Strike Break or even a couple of other power-ups in more simple ways. This is the Cling Gem. Press right trigger or left shift while falling along walls to ride them. Hold tight to walls while you propel yourself a short distance. Can be jumped out of or can even go around curved walls and corners. This is a massively fun ability to use that can also really help you break level design in tandem with the other abilities and hidden abilities of Sybil that we've mentioned thus far. You move along the walls at a good click while using the Cling Gem, but your speed does start lowering, and thus your position on the wall starts lowering as well as you go along it. But either just jumping off to another wall or going around a corner can also reset that slightly. This ability is really fun to use, and in the right hands, it can be outright devastating to the intended progression curve of the game. If you use it in certain corners with certain inputs, you can clip into walls or beyond locked doors with enough effort. Heck, there was a large gate back at the Sansa Keep a few moments ago that I didn't address. You can use it to get behind that way earlier than you meant to if you use it right. I don't do that in this LP though, because frankly, when I tried to do the speedrun back when, the clips involving the Cling Gem were the thing I was the worst at. There is a bit of finickiness when it comes to the gem though, in that there's times where I hold the button to activate the Cling and Sybil just refuses to adhere to the wall like that. Maybe it's that I'm facing into the wall too directly, maybe you need to face more to either side to actually get it to work a little more consistently. Maybe it's that I'm too close or too far from the wall, maybe it's a timing thing, I don't know, but it's bugged the hell out of me since my first playthrough. Appointed by the guarded hand in the Bailey. Deep in the underbelly, surrounded by holes. This is our endgame destination. Atop the distant tower beckoning the lost livestock. On center stage for all to see in the theater. Sitting upon a lonely throne forgotten in the keep. Those tablets might seem like they're talking about something vaguely, but if you combine their information with the fact there's a major key right here, what they're for is pretty clear quickly. They are telling you the 5 locations of the major keys in the game. And since there's a giant door here with 5 locks on it, you can make a good estimated guess on what we have to do here. Find all 5 major keys located throughout the level design and come back here and we can access the end game. That specific switch I hit there, by the way, actually opened up another door in the tower itself. Specifically one from one of the things they added in a later update, which will tackle that specific version of it at the end of the LP. With both that major key and the Cling Gem grabbed, though, I want to leave the Tower Remains now and head back to the empty Bailey, not only to grab that aspect I couldn't grab earlier, but also to tackle the first instance of what they added in later updates that I've talked about a few times in this part. Worth noting, getting this specific aspect, even with the Cling Gem, can be kind of tight. You need to do a Sunsetter, then Cling Gem, and then do some kicks off the walls, and even then that's not exactly the safest way to do it. The aspect up here actively increases the amount of power you gain from hitting an enemy on the bar for indignation on the top left. Hitting the switch up there, though, lowers the gate down here in front of this pink gem. We might have seen 1 or 2 of these in the game up to this point, but this is the first one I'm tackling. These are area time trials. There's one in every single area in the game. The way these work is that upon hitting the gem, a timer starts. Several blue orbs will then spawn in that area's level design, and you need to collect them all as fast as possible. The par time as well as your current time are both listed in the top right. Though failing the par time doesn't reset the trial, you need to hit the gem again to actively start over, which can be a little bit annoying in some time trials, honestly. Each of the various time trials in the game actively have 3 different par times, ranked bronze, silver, and gold, getting increasingly tighter as you go up. With that said, if you only care to get the rewards from a time trial, you only need to clear the bronze time. The silver and gold times are just a mixture of bragging rights as well as testing yourself. These are actively very interesting platforming challenges, but there's times where they can be very precise, especially if you do them before you have every ability in the game, as the movement that you need to do to get things done efficiently can be very tangling on the controller at times, not for nothing, especially if you're not used to doing the backflip cancels and all that from a Sunsetter. But I do ultimately find most of these pretty fun to do. There's 2 in the game specifically I'm not a fan of, but those are because of the areas you actively do the time trials in themselves. There are also some time trials that play things a little bit differently, in that you need to collect certain orbs in certain orders, but we'll talk more about those when we reach them. As for the empty Bailey time trial in specific, the par time for collecting all 14 orbs here is 1:40 for the bronze par time, 1:20 for the silver, and getting all of them in less than a minute period for the gold. I have mostly only ever gotten the bronze times in my few attempts at the time trials in this game, but I've gotten some silvers here and again. For clearing a bronze par time on a time trial, you gain a new outfit for Sybil. Clearing the empty Bailey time trial gets you the soldier outfit, which has a long flowing cloak kind of deal alongside some gold armor. I actually really like the way these look. I'm going to be doing every time trial in this game, but I do them sometimes on the first visit to an area, sometimes a second area, largely for the sake of getting other things done in the areas while I'm there. This is also so I can actively show off every outfit for at least some portion of the LP, as I pretty much like every single outfit Sybil has in the game. Worth noting, Sybil's outfits were largely added in the update that added time trials, but there were technically 3 for her in the game at launch. Specifically, there was her base outfit, which we had at the very start of the game, as well as a variant toggled in the system options that gave that outfit pants. Assumedly for people who like pants, or fear the low polygon dumpy Sybil has like the cowards they are. There was one other outfit though, but you had to find it, placed here in Castle Sansa, actually. It's still in the game, but as of the update that added the time trials, it had one assigned to it just to make it work like the other outfits in the game largely. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3 we're going to briefly return to the listless library to grab some straggler items over here, before moving on to some deeper parts of the world at large. See you guys then.